In this lesson, we will learn how to solve linear equations that require only addition to solve. The directions are to solve, and whenever we solve a linear equation, we go through the steps in solving a linear equation. Step 1 is to simplify both expressions. Taking a look at each of these expressions, if you were to go through the steps in the order of operations, there would be nothing we could do to simplify either of them. So we can move on to step 2. Step 2 is to get your variable to one expression. Taking a look at these two expressions, the variable is only in the left-hand expression, so there's nothing to do in step 2. So both steps 1 and 2 are taken care of. Step 3 is to get your variable alone, and there are two things that you have to do that. The first thing you need to do is move all terms without your variable to the other expression by adding the opposite. Taking a look at the expression with our variable, we can identify terms here. Remember that terms are things being added. Here we have addition, so the terms are d and 3, because those are the two things that are being added. We need to move the terms without our variable to the other expression by adding the opposite. d is a term that does have our variable, so we're not going to do anything with it. 3, on the other hand, is a term without our variable, so we're going to move it to the other expression by adding the opposite. The opposite of 3 is negative 3, so we're going to add the opposite of 3 to both expressions. When you do this, there's nothing that we're adding to the d term, so it comes straight down. However, we're adding 3 with negative 3, and 3 plus negative 3 is 0, so we could write d plus 0 here, because 3 plus negative 3 is 0, but since d plus 0 is just d, because whenever you add 0 to anything, you get itself, we don't need to write this plus 0 here. d plus 3 plus negative 3 is just d. So we can move on now to the other expression, the right-hand expression. 10 plus negative 3 is 7. Here I can notice that I have got my variable alone. So I have done what I needed to do in solving a linear equation. I've found the solution set. d equals 7. And remember, whenever you solve an equation, you're looking for the solution set. So once you've got your variable alone, you should put your solution in set brackets. I didn't need to go to step 3b here because I already had my variable alone before I got there. d doesn't really have a coefficient here. You could consider that d has a coefficient of 1, but when I multiply by the reciprocal of 1, nothing's going to happen, because the reciprocal of 1 is 1. Multiplying by 1 doesn't change the value. In other words, once you get your variable alone, you are finished. You found your solution set. Let's consider another example. For the steps in solving a linear equation, we're going to solve this linear equation. First, we need to simplify both expressions, and when you go through the steps in the order of operations, in the left-hand expression, when you get to step 2, you'll need to change all subtraction to addition by adding the opposite. So this now reads p plus negative 4 equals 2. We've simplified both expressions. Step 2 is to get your variable to one expression, and p is our variable, and it's already in one expression, just the left-hand expression. We do not find our variable in the right-hand expression. So it's already in one expression. Next, we need to get our variable alone by moving all terms without our variable to the other expression by adding the opposite. Looking in the expression with our variable, there are terms because here's a plus sign. We have things being added. We need to find the term without our variable in it, that's the negative 4, and move it to the other side, move it to the other expression by adding the opposite. The opposite of negative 4 is positive 4, so we're going to add 4 to both expressions. In the left-hand expression, the p comes down. Negative 4 plus 4 is 0, so there's going to be nothing left to write there. In the right-hand expression, 2 plus 4 is 6. We've got our variable alone, so we found our solution set. This means if I were to plug 6 into the original equation, that I would get a true equation. And I invite you to check that on your own. Let's take a look at one final example. 9 plus w equals 11. Again, the directions are to solve, which means we're finding the solution set to an equation. We're going to follow the steps in solving a linear equation, and step 1 is to simplify both expressions. Taking a look at each of these expressions, if you go through the steps in the order of operations, there would be nothing you could do. So both expressions are already simplified. Step 2 is to get your variable to one expression, and our variable is w, and it's only in the left-hand expression. So step 2 is already done. Now we can concentrate on getting our variable alone by moving all terms without our variable to the other expression by adding the opposite. Here we have terms, we have things being added, 9 plus w. So we need to get rid of the term without our variable in it by adding the opposite. So we're going to add the opposite of 9 to both expressions. When we do that, 9 plus negative 9 is 0, and then I bring down my w here. 11 plus negative 9 is 2. I've got my variable alone. W is all by itself in one expression, so I've found the solution set to this linear equation. W equals the set consisting of 2. I've found the solution set, so I've solved this linear equation.